welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. You can also get a whole bunch of other links on that website through Linktree, but the horrormakesushappy.com URL is very easy to remember, and everything else can be accessed through there, so that's the one you want.
Yep.
Anyway, before we get started, this is a trigger warning. We do this every show. We talk about messed up stuff, horror stuff. So it is possible that we could delve into sensitive subjects that could include infuse. Yes, we're going to infuse foul language into this salad. Foul language, violence, bad things, murder, R word, F word, all those things are possible.
So if you don't like that, go away.
Yeah, go away. I'll taunt you a second time. Fetch it a vache.
Quoi?
Fetch it a vache.
David's like, what the hell are we talking about?
Right. Anyway, with the disclaimer out of the way, what do we got going on, Steve?
Still doing 3 events weekly on Discord. We've got Watch Party on Saturday where we're watching movies, and then on Sundays we host a listen party where we stream episodes of our podcast and chat about them. And then also Chris streams himself working on his webcomic, Pieces, which you can find at piecesofflesh.com.
Yes. We watched Rear Window last night. I'd never seen it.
Me either. Well, I saw part of it, but that was the first time I saw it all the way through.
Oh, Jimmy.
It was this last week was Alfred Hitchcock's 125th birthday.
Yeah, it was.
I thought that was a good one to watch. But today we're talking to Mr. David Simmons, author best known for his books Ghosts of East Baltimore and Ghosts of West Baltimore. How you doing, David?
I'm great. Chris, Steve, thank you for having me on the show. It's great to be on here with y'all.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Looking forward to talking to you. I think it was Paula Ash was the one that suggested we reach out to you.
Absolutely. Paula's a big inspiration. Her collection, We Are Here to Hurt Each Other, it's just so brutal. You feel me? And I'm a big fan. So for her to plug me with y'all, that's just crazy to me. So I really appreciate that.
She, speaking of current events, she won an award for that, I think, last night or the night before. She's at some convention somewhere in Massachusetts, I think.
I think it's called Necronomicon, right?
I think it was Necronomicon, yes.
Yeah, and she won. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
No shit. Well, good.
Well deserved. Yeah.
Before we get into the meat of the interview, you want to let us know what you're currently working on?
Yeah, so I have a project right now that is in the process of being edited called Eradicator. It's coming out with a Apocalypse Party next year. I'm really excited about that project, and so I'm really excited to get that joint out there. I'm still moving my copies of Ghosts of East and West everywhere I go through the states.
Cool. What kind of thing is Eradicator?
Well, so I don't know if y'all are familiar with the writing of Charlene Elsby or B.R. Yeager, but
Elsby sounds familiar, but I can't place it off the top of my head.
So these are horror writers who wrote some books through Apocalypse Party, and another author, Grant Womack, he put me on to their writing, and I just kind of like fanned out and like ran through their whole catalog, right? And Apocalypse Party, they just, as a publisher, they're just so bleak and just so dark, and like all their projects come out with like crazy interior art by Mike Correo and like cover art by Revert and shit like that. So it's like they just have this look to them that just make them look illegal and esoteric and shit like that. So after investigating that whole catalog, I was like, oh, I bet I'm gonna write a book specifically for this publisher. So I wrote a book about a female serial killer who worked at the NICU in Johns Hopkins. The big hospital over here. And and I got it to AP. Ben said, let's get it. And that joint coming out next year.
Nice.
She's not NICU, but we've had a doctor on the program as NJ Gallegos, so but she'd be interested in reading that too.
That's cool.
So the general gist of this interview, what we're going to do is we will go through your love of the genre from your childhood through teen years into adult years. And then at the end, we'll talk about any common themes that have been cropping up through the call. But if there's any questions that we ask that you don't want to answer, you just say pass and move on. But starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Oh man, one thing I gotta say is that my mom and dad, like, they had that 80s, 90s era bookshelf that had all the Stephen King and Dean Koontz books. You know what I'm talking about? Like back in the day, how moms and dads had them joints because they was like real popular mainstream. So like, I had those in the house, and before I was, could read at that level, I had Goosebumps. Moms used to always let me get the Goosebumps. She'd give me a little bread to take to the little trailer book fair, Scholastic joint, I think it was. You could go up inside it and buy the book. So I come back with all the different Goosebumps, that Scary Stories collection, I think that it was, with the really cool art. These were all like my earliest joints because I was always into horror. And specifically what got me into horror was accidentally seeing the movie The Fly, the original movie The Fly, when I was like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 or some shit like that. and ever since that point, my mom's attitude was, you can't watch this shit, but if you want to read about it, we got all these books. I don't know. It's crazy. I guess she felt like I was going to seek it out anyway. So I might as well like have to read to do it. Which is kind of crazy because when I was young, I was just a jit reading Cujo and shit. And that got like a child killer in like the first like quarter of the book. You know what I mean? The Frank Dodd child killer. So I vividly remember having a copy of Cujo in 3rd grade and getting in trouble for having that joint. And then like my mom being told that I had it and her being like, I gave it to him. And then, like, not knowing what to do about
Man,
that.
did you know your son is reading Stephen King and Cujo like that? Yeah, I gave it to him.
Yeah, and I say that's how it went down. She just, she'd give me the books, and then I'd say around, like, as I got a little bit older, she'd be like, all right, since you read Firestarter, let's go watch Firestarter. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
You read The Shining, let's go watch The Shining. So it was like a reward to, me reading it. So yeah, that's how it came up for me.
That's an interesting point about the reward part of it, because like my first thought was that's even worse because our brain's imagination is much more vivid than anything you'd see on the screen. So she's like, here, don't do weed. Here's some crack. It's like, right. but I could see her point as the reward of, okay, I got you into reading. So now your reward is to watch the movie.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell her you said that. I'll be like, yo, mom, I went on the podcast, Horror Makes Us Happy. They was like, yo, you was serving me rocks when I was just trying to smoke J's. That's fucked up, yo. I'm going to tell her.
Ease people into it,
Right. but you're not wrong. The writing is much more visceral. There's much more stuff in the books than they show, at least back then, before movies started getting all crazy.
Even now, I mean, there's whenever you do an adaptation, there's always something you got to leave out.
Fast.
Yeah. Like I don't, it's been forever since I've seen the film. I haven't read the book Cujo, but I don't even remember there being a child killer in there. Was there?
Not in the movie. In the book, they got Frank Dodd, who I think is a character from The Dead Zone, I believe. And it's like his ghost is like hiding in what, well, I don't want to say too much, although I don't know how you would spoil a book. That book is old as fuck, but like basically like he a child abuser killer, but like a ghost, and like the book opened up with he in the boy's closet. You know what I mean? Damn, so like, that's the yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that shit wild. You know what I mean?
It's like a point you start reading this book and you just got to put it down, stare forward for a second with this shocked look of, okay.
Yo,
this is what I'm in for here.
Maybe she's trying to do the thing where she sits you down with a pack of cigarettes and says, okay, you get to smoke the whole pack.
Right? You want to read horror? All right, here's some Stephen King. Here's The Stand. Have fun. I'll see you in a week. Or a month. That's a big book.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, you didn't start off with that. You said the earliest things you remember were the Goosebumps. Was there a particular Goosebumps story that you remember?
Absolutely. The Haunted Mask.
What'd you like about that one?
I liked the cover and and it's going to sound crazy, but what I liked about it is how the cover hits you really hard and then the book lived up to the cover. I don't exactly know how to articulate what it meant to me when I was that age, but looking back, I'd like to think it was an example of not being disappointed. If that makes sense. You feel me? Like, I don't know. Like, I remember being young as hell and seeing that VHS back in the day of that Tales from the Dark Side movie, and it had like the little demon dude on the front, and the joint looked so crazy. And then I finally watched it, and that shit was trash, right? like it was the opposite of that. So I remember, but honestly, most of the Goosebump books were like that. There was the ventriloquist dummy joint on the front. There was one with the haunted camera. There was just a lot of memorable joints, you know. They all kind of, I guess, blurring together to me as one now. But the haunted mask stands out as just being the banger.
Do you remember anything about the story that you liked?
No, honestly, I don't. I'd have to go on Google, look up what the synopsis was about, and because I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it was something like you put the mask on and eventually like you couldn't take it off, like it took control of you. But I could be wrong, but that's the vague memory I have about it.
Okay.
Kind of makes me wonder if, I mean, there's the Jim Carrey movie, but the comic was much older. I wonder which was first. That
Did y'all ever read any of them joints? The Goosebump joints?
Nah.
I don't remember. I don't think I did. But going back to Chris's comment about, the story, which came first, I would be willing to bet that there's probably an even older fairy tale or...
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sure. Everything's based off everything.
Yeah. Let's see. When you mentioned a Scary Stories collection, were you talking about Goosebumps or a different collection?
No, I think it was called Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark or something like that. A lot. It had some really cool art in it. One of them had like a weird clown face looking dude on it, red nose, smoking a pipe and shit. Yep. But I do remember those stories. I remember my favorite one in that collection. One, there was a shorty. I think her name was Ruth. A spider like bites her face, but then the bite just keep growing and growing and growing, and then it bursts because it ain't no bite; it's a bunch of spider eggs. Oh shit, man, that joint fucked me up when I was young. I remember that one. There was one in that collection too. I think it was called like Waiting for Martin or something like that. But it was my first. Looking back, it was my first foray into weird horror, which is what I prefer to read and write. And what it is it's a short story about, the way I remember it is like there's this cat and it's just standing there, and they ask the cat like, what you doing here? And the cat's like, waiting for Martin. Then they come back and now there's a slightly bigger cat. You feel me? He's like, what you doing here? Waiting for Martin. Then it show up and the cat's getting progressively bigger. You feel me? Like that's fucking crazy. Like what's that about? You know? I remember those from that collection.
Did they ever explain it?
I don't remember that part, and I think they didn't. And I don't think they did. I think it just got like, because that's the type of horror that I really like, where just situations get progressively more stressful and unexplainable, you know? Like
more and more ambivalent as it goes throughout the story.
Yes.
And makes it more stressful.
Yes.
As a result of no explanation. Yeah.
Absolutely. And not in a necessarily a Lovecraftian, like cosmic horror sort of way, but more in just like people behaving in ways that can't be explained that affect other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What'd you like about The Fly?
Oh man. I mean, I still rock with that movie hard. I mean, The Fly is great. When I was young, what I liked about it was that it scared the hell out of me. I walked in on a scene where Jeff Goldblum like spitting that fly milky white shit into his food so he can try to digest it. And that shit fucked me up. But
walked in on that scene. Yeah, that's a hell of a scene to walk in on.
That's right. That's the one I walked in on. But what do I love? I mean, I really love that movie because it shows, a man with, delusions of grandeur and, his ego and narcissism leads to him, fucking himself up and then thinking, it's going to make him better at all these things. And then his body just gradually falls apart. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, I don't know, man. Like, that's one of my biggest fears. Like, I don't have too many phobias out there. You feel me? Like, I ain't scared of no heights or claustrophobia or anything. But one of my fears, man, is like I don't know, you make a mistake, right? And you injure your body in a way that can never. You only get one vessel in this life. You feel me? This your body to use, and so I had a homeboy who got out of prison, and he like messed his leg up, and he ended up having to get it amputated because he ain't take care of it. And like, it don't matter how much he get his life together now, he ain't got no leg. You feel me?
Yeah.
So like, that's scary to me. And the Fly is like that, man. His body is just falling apart, and there's nothing he can do. That's it.
I think that's one of the things that's so visceral about body horror is it makes it personal. It's your body betraying itself.
And like you said, it's permanent.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another aspect of it I never really thought of. It's invasive and personal, but yeah, you don't get a replacement body. Is one.
Yep.
You don't, bro. And there are a lot of things in life that can happen to you, even when you're doing what you're supposed to. You feel me? That can permanently alter you. You feel me? Like just things that just change you forever. You get into an argument with somebody at a bar or something, and they hit you, and you fall the wrong way. You hit your head. Now you can't walk no more. Like, it's crazy. That's crazy to me.
Going back to your earlier comment about people behaving in different ways, I mean, that's also true internally. You get into a relationship with somebody and they fuck you up internally in ways that you never recover from either.
That's true too. And nobody can see those, so you can't even get no empathy for it.
Switching lanes here a bit. Did you participate in Halloween when you were a kid?
Yeah. Mostly just like committing chaos as I got older, with my friends just running around the streets and shit like that, wilding out. But I used to love Halloween. I wanted it to be more like the Halloween from The Crow, like the Devil's Night Halloween when I was growing up. You feel me? But as an adult, I thoroughly enjoy dressing my daughter up in whatever Disney princess she want to be. You feel me?
It's nice that you get to relive Halloween that way when you become an adult,
Absolutely.
So when you were still young enough to be dressing up or being dressed up, do you remember having a favorite costume or a least favorite costume?
Yeah, yo, once the movie The Crow came out when I was young, and like I wanted to do that. I think I did that makeup and all black outfit. I think my mom did that makeup for me like 3 years in a row after that shit came out. I ain't gonna lie. Yeah.
How do you feel about the new one?
Not out yet, right?
There are images and trailers.
Yeah, images. Steve and Chris, I'm gonna tell y'all something. I don't be trying to hate or say anything negative about anything just because, it's easy not to be a hater. So I just try not to, but I probably won't be watching it, but I don't think much about it. The original was important for the time period,
Yeah, it was.
I think something similar that has come up on previous calls, I've talked about music and how as we're growing older, we hear newer music that doesn't hit the same way that songs hit when we were kids, because a lot of times a song will have a certain emotion to it. And the phrase Chris used that I really liked is that seat's taken. Like there's a song that hit me a certain way when I was a kid and it filled a certain spot. And now another song's come out that hits that same spot, but the seat's already taken. So it doesn't hit the same way. And I think maybe kind of similar what you're saying here about The Crow is like that seat's taken. You can watch it. It might be interesting, but it's not going to hit the same way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I really like the way you laid that out. That was a cool way of looking at it. Yeah, that's what it is.
Thank you. So, did you have any recurring nightmares or any recurring dreams when you were a kid?
Huh. Wow. Damn. I don't really remember many of my dreams or nightmares or anything. It's hard for me I'm drawing a blank to that question, to be honest with you.
Not every question is going to land. You just never know till you ask.
Oh, yeah.
Was there ever a time in your childhood when you were terrified of something in real life?
Yeah, definitely. There were some bad people, around when I was growing up. So I'd say definitely some people like that. It depends. It depends how old we are getting. Like once I hit my teenage years, I started having run-ins with the police, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I became terrified of the police.
Okay.
And to this day, I get a bit of that anxiety in the chest when a police officer is like behind me in the car, right? But I'm working through it now because it's been so long since I've had any reason to, really fear the police beyond just the fact that they're the police. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, early on, I've always been, I was terrified of the police.
Can relate. I also had my difficulties when I was younger and growing out of that, but there's still that, there is a power differential there, and it's still, makes you say a little anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Flipping that question around, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or at bliss?
Oh, yeah. Whenever I was in my home with a book, and my mom and my little sister and my dog that we had at the time, and like, man, any of those times I'm feeling safe and comfortable and good in my home. I had good folks, good family. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that. Yeah.
Okay. So the next two questions are also going to be a pair. We're going to start with the negative one so we can end on the positive one. Do you remember the first person you hurt?
The first person I probably hurt that I really cared about was probably, I know that's not the question you asked, but like it's a little bit different. But I'd say my mother, the hurt and the disappointment when I would get arrested for fucking around and doing various things when I was growing up. So like that hurt from the disappointment, but like, I don't know, like when I didn't really I wasn't into bullying. You feel me? Like bullying was not something I was into. I mean, me and my friends fried each other up, but that's what friends do. You feel me? But like, I never targeted nobody like that. And like, I don't know, when I was growing up and shit and I robbed drug dealers and shit like that, like who the fuck cares if I hurt them? Like I got robbed too when I was selling drugs. Like it is what it is. It's just part of the fuck. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I would say my mom, like my mom, that look of disappointment. My father just looking like, how the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, why? Like, just stay in the fucking house. Like, you don't even need to go outside. Like, for real. Like, that type of like, what did I do wrong? Like, why is, my mom. My mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That tracks. Because, I mean, that's kind of like, it's a very important driving goal when you're young, when you're a kid, is, your parents' approval or your parents, like, being okay with you. And when you get that first moment of disappointment, it's like, it hits hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we're going to flip that around and end on a positive. Do you remember the first person you helped?
The first person I helped. I don't know if it's the first person I helped, but the first time I helped someone where it made an impression beyond just like, helping somebody with a very basic task or things like that is when I was locked up in juvenile detention. A lot of kids can't read. Like Baltimore got it's got a mess up literacy rate, man. And a lot of kids in there can't read and shit like that. But like, because thank God for my parents and all that, and what I had growing up, I was privileged to have. I could, so I would write letters home to their girlfriends and their family and shit like that. You feel me?
Nice, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Thanks. But yeah, so that's one that made an impression on me as far as helping somebody.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Similar vein, there are also people that do like, good at art and they'll draw on envelopes and stuff like that.
That's exactly what it was like. And there was somebody there who would draw on people's envelopes, just like you said. Absolutely.
So moving into the teen years here, do you remember any particular scary stories or books or movies that really stood out to you from your teens?
Oh, yeah. So All right, so as I'm getting a little bit older, right, that's when I'm branching off beyond like my mom's bookshelf. You feel me, with the mainstream Stephen King and shit. So okay, bet I'm finding out about Clive Barker. You feel me, and
Okay. Okay.
not just about Hellraiser. You feel me? Big story that made an impression on me. In the Hills, the Cities. Do y'all know this story?
No, sadly,
Clive,
I haven't read any Barker. I need to get on and read some of his books, man. Because
he's good. His shit is fire, right? But okay, time is passing now. Now I find out about my favorite writer of all time, Brian Evanson. And this opens up my eyes to like how everything can be. So as I'm getting older, that's when I discovered those authors. And I became such a huge fan.
Okay. Did you have a favorite Brian Evanson book?
Yeah, well, his first collection, Altman's Tongue, was the one that I rocked with at first, but it was Last Days that was really big to me. Also, I didn't want to leave out Brian Keene's Urban Gothic, and a few of Brian Keene's joints were important to me too. You know what I mean? At that time, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We've had him on the show, actually.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I thought that name sounded familiar.
he's cool. He's a good dude.
Yep, he was. So
Shout out to Brian.
Let's start with Clive. What'd you like about In the Hills, the Cities?
It's a story about these dudes, right? They a couple, right? They together, and I think they're on a honeymoon, or maybe not a honeymoon, but like they're trying to like salvage their relationship in this on this like Euro trip or whatever, and they like come across what is essentially a ritual where two towns that are kind of like right next to each other for years, what they do is the people of each town bind themselves and create huge walking giants out of the citizens of their towns using like straps and pulleys and all sorts of shit, right? So they're these like walking kaiju humans, right? Made out of humans.
Yep.
Is that me?
Well, something cut out there, but I it's a good time anyway, because I know that story. I remember what you're talking about. I can't remember who brought it up though. There was another guest that did definitely bring up that story though.
God, sorry, I had some interference. I didn't know if that was coming on y'all side of mine.
That's all good.
But if it, all right, cool.
So what'd you like about the story? I mean, obviously, like those are the details about the story, but what particularly did you really like about it? You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so what I liked about it is, well, to be real, I was younger when I read it, and I hadn't necessarily read a story where the main protagonists were a gay couple. You feel me? Yeah. So that was the first part. So I was like, that's different. And being younger, you see something like that, and it's like, like I said, I was younger, so that seemed taboo to me at the time, if that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, it don't now, but it definitely did then.
Yeah, it's different times. I imagine this was the 90s.
Yeah.
So it's not a lot of horror authors starting off a story with a gay couple.
That's right. Clive, though. So it's Clive, though, right? So I was like, oh, okay. And I'm reading it, and then I don't know, the image of two giant warring giants made out of humans, and like the humans in the Achilles heel are like bursting and shit like that, because they're like, it's just crazy. You feel me? And it just wasn't typical. It wasn't the typical. I mean, goddamn, how many stories do Stephen King write where the main character is a writer?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Like what? Like, you feel what I'm saying? Like that was very hard for me to like relate to in a way. You feel me? And not that I could relate to being an adult gay couple in Europe when I had been a kid that ain't never left my city. but the point is, it was just something different.
It was something different, yeah.
Yeah. And eventually I got into reading a lot of Donald Goines, which is straight crime, inner city crime writing. And And I'm reading this at the same time as I'm reading the horror that I'm describing to you. And this combination is kind of what influenced the way I write.
Okay.
You know?
Don Goins is like true crime, or is it fiction?
Yeah, it's fiction. It's fiction. Donald Goins is fiction. And it's like urban crime. Yeah.
Okay. What'd you like about Altman's tongue?
That vagueness, that ambivalence. Not a lot of the stories really make much sense or have much explanation, but they give you a feeling. Like there's one story where there's just a group of people and they just driving down the highway tossing cats out of the car. And like the person in the back is like, y'all should stop tossing cats. And like they're on some shut up or we'll toss you. And then the person's like, all right. And they just keep going. It's just stuff like that. It just there's one with a serial killer in there called Body, where he just going around and he's just killing different women at different rest stops. And every so often he calls home to what you think might be like an ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, but he just yells at her and then hangs up the phone and like just stuff like that. But you see, I'm remembering it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes you feel just off. It's very off-putting, very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What'd you like about Last Days?
Last Days to me is a perfectly written book. In the same way of I think John Wick is a perfect movie.
Okay.
It's just perfect. It's very simple.
Mm-hmm.
It has some twists and turns that are great. But more importantly, it's just the flow, the way it goes is perfect. Have y'all read Last Days?
No.
Nope.
It's about a dude. The book opened up with a detective who's on leave or retired because he had to cut off his own hand and cauterize his own wrist and shoot the guy who was keeping him captive in some sort of incident that they don't really go into, right?
Yeah.
Because of the fact that he cauterizes, it is, right? And because of the fact that he cauterizes his own hand and shit, these two dudes from a church of dudes who cut off parts of their body to show their dedication to God show up at his house and are like, all right, we read about you cutting off your own hand. So now we need you to help us investigate a mystery at our church of people with missing bodies.
I think I've heard about this one too.
And that's the book. And then he just go down this crazy path of investigating these crazy church brotherhood of mutilation people. And yeah.
And the more parts you cut off, the higher you rank in the church.
Yes, but then there's another church that don't agree with that. So those two and say
of course.
Yeah, exactly. So they just start beefing with each other. And this dude, this poor detective, he like caught between them like a Messiah type figure, maybe something like where each one want to use him as like a Jesus figure.
Meanwhile, he's over here just like, I don't want any part of either of this.
He's just like, take me back home. I just want to recover in the dark.
Right.
Like, that's the whole book.
And which book was this again?
It's called Last Days by Brian Evanson. And I tell y'all this, every time I write a book or I start a project or anything, when I started out, I swear to y'all, I say to myself, I got to make sure it's try to be as good as Last Days. That's what I do every time. I say I got to do it every time.
Yep.
That is funny you mentioned that. I just wrote a piece in a little short story I'm working on where this guy happens upon a podunk town in Virginia in the 1930s during the Depression, and he happens across this town that is a cult of sorts, and they worship like an old pilgrim god, and they cut off body parts and eat them. There's a little bit of cannibalism in it too, but yeah, it's funny. A lot of similarities there. I might have to check this out.
Great minds think alike,
right?
So, what'd you like about Urban Gothic?
Oh, okay. I would love to tell y'all about this, and I've told Brian Keene this before, and I've told him this, and he know it. So, all right, I'm gonna make sure to say this correctly because I don't want it to come off as combative or anything like that with anyone else, but there's a lot of small town horror out there in our genre, right?
Yeah.
That's a whole thing, right? But I don't know anything about small towns.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm from, the population is 600,000.
Yep.
I don't know anything about small towns. So when I first got Urban Gothic and I first read it, I was like, holy shit, a haunted house story with mutants in the hood in Philly. I was like,
Okay.
oh shit. I was like, the only time anybody ever done this that I've seen is Candyman.
Yep.
And that was a movie. You feel me, in Chicago. So I'm like, okay, bet. So what I loved about it is I understood the architecture more and the stakes. Like I don't like if you're in a small town, there you don't really have to write in the police, right? Because your town only got like one sheriff and shit.
Yeah.
See, I don't even know how they work like that. But like, I assume y'all don't have many police if y'all got a population of 2,000 or something like that. So, how do you address that when you have like now you have your story in Philly, right? Brian addresses that. He sets it in a part of town where the police don't even come to.
Right.
You feel me? Where they don't even come to because it's so depressed and not taken care of in this part of town and neglected, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many elements that are in that book that I did not see dealt with in other books. There's racial elements that aren't dealt with in a book where when it's a small town horror and everybody is completely homogenous and there's nothing different. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know if I want to say identification because it's maybe some of that, but just not just identification with the person, but the
location.
Yeah.
The environment.
The environment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because like you watch a movie, right, or read a book where the house is haunted, so the family deals with it, and then eventually they're like, all right, fuck it, we gotta move to a new house or stay in an apartment. We can't afford this shit. And like, you know, at the time when I'm reading Urban Gothic in this, you know, my community is not a community that can afford to just leave their house after you bought a house. Like if you buy a house where I'm from and it's haunted, I guess you're gonna have to figure you're gonna figure some shit out. You better hope it ain't a destructive poltergeist type joint. You better hope it's just annoying.
Yeah.
You feel me?
Call a priest, and if that doesn't work, that's your corner and this is my corner.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, we're gonna have access to the kitchen on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I get Mondays and Thursdays.
Facts. And you want to know something nowadays, but only nowadays, at least in a mainstream sense, are we seeing more media like that that shows horror in different settings. To me,
yeah,
that's what I'm seeing.
So you mentioned that you didn't really have many dreams, or you don't remember them. So I'm guessing that's the same for the teen years.
Yeah.
For anything that actually happened that was terrifying in real life during the teen section, I had made a note about the police. Was there anything else that you wanted to put as a response to that?
I mean, I could tell y'all some terrifying shit if y'all want to hear some. I mean, what do y'all? How hard can you go on this part? I mean, like
we have the disclaimer. We can go hard.
All right.
Well, Chris is like, bring it.
The only restriction is whether or not you want to talk about it. Other than that, everything's cool. I mean, this isn't like, you know, lawyer-patient confidentiality. So if it involves murder, I would just
no, nothing like that. It's just, I don't know. After I tell y'all this shit, I feel like it's just gonna get kind of dark real quick. So you gotta have something to brighten it up. But it is a horror podcast, so I don't know. All right, so I'm locked up in this place called Meadow Mountain, which is called a forestry camp. It's out in the mountains and shit. I was like 16, so that's where I'm at. These two kids, they had been getting into it like for a while, right? And they were just constantly like taking swipes at each other, but like slight shit. You feel me? Just like words and like, but not anything physical, right? And I don't even remember what was said that had it elevate to this point, but we were all on kitchen duty. And one of, the guy, I don't remember the guy's name who did it, but I remember the guy who got it done to. But the guy who did it, he had been heating up like a concoction of like hair grease and baby oil and different shit in the kitchen while we was all working there together. And they got to arguing again, and he just flung the concoction at the kid whose name was Murphy, right? And the shit hit his face, right? And the first thing you do when something hit your face, whether it's hot, cold, or whatever, usually you reach your hands up, right? And he immediately grabbed his face, and there was the adult who was in there. There was the kitchen staff who was this big dude, and I always remember he's this big bald dude who had a tattoo on his head. And then there was a guard named Mr. Demetrius, right? And they came running, and Mr. Demetrius is screaming, don't touch your face. Don't touch your face. And the kid who flung the shit is still like holding the container of pot that's been like cooking it, right? And he's just dumbstruck. You feel me? And all of us have turned and looked because we're like, it's just like, it was a shocking situation. Anyway, everybody listening right now, y'all listening, who's going to be listening, y'all want to know what happened when he moved his hands away from his face.
He couldn't.
Well, there was resistance, but when he pulled his hands away, his face came with it. Yeah. A lot of his face. And I know I threw up, right? Because I don't have the strongest stomach, right? I immediately Earled. A bunch of us Earled in the kitchen. And the next thing I know, they hit the like panic button and shit, came and restrained it. But that was probably one of the most terrifying things I ever seen, because it goes back once again to my fear of permanent bodily damage. Like that kid, Murphy, like, I don't even remember what he was in there for, but at that place, you couldn't be there longer than 9 months because the program was 9 months. You feel me?
It couldn't have been all that bad.
Yeah, you feel me? Right. So like 9 months, bro, and you go home to your moms and dads with no face. That shit crazy. Yeah. So I had to say that, man.
Was he like it? He said it was like hair gel and grease and shit. That is not food. So he wasn't even making food. And then like this guy was intentionally boiling something to throw on someone, it sounds like.
Yeah, there are a lot of different things that people make when you're in there, you feel me? And that's something that I forgot what they call it. I don't think it's called a hot shot, a hot something or something like that. But that's something that they do. You get the hair, everybody yo, it sounds crazy, but what I'm about to say, but this is a fact. I don't know if they do it anymore, and it just is what it is. But when you're in juvenile detention, if you're black, they give you Royal Crown hair grease. And if you're white, they give you Irish Spring soap, this conditioner thing, and a comb, right? But if you're black, you get Royal Crown hair grease and you get a brush. You feel me? Like a brush on a wooden block.
I mean, I can understand the brush.
Yeah, so like that's what y'all get. Like it's like, oh, you like there's no like if you want the other shit, you gotta trade with each other and shit. Right. So he had taken that Royal Crown hair grease and he had used that and some other shit and had been cooking it, because the only time we had access to heat or anything like that was when we was on kitchen duty. Yeah, man.
Well, like I said, we flipped that question around then and asked, was there ever a time in your teens when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or bliss?
Yes. Palate cleanser, please.
Yeah.
As a teen, I don't know. I went snowboarding a couple times when I was a teenager, and I thought that was really relaxing. I haven't done it again as an adult, but I think if I did do it again, I would like it a lot. So when my daughters get older, I'm gonna take them skiing or snowboarding. Cool. But I remember it feeling really peaceful.
Yeah, it can be. Moving into adult years then. So what movies or stories or books in your adult years have really stood out to you?
Well, now we're in my adult years, so I can talk about all the authors I'm reading now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. So Right now, I'm really into Joe Koch, Charlene Elsby, B.R. Yeager, still Brian Evanson. I'm really into all of the Broken River boys.
Hang on. I can't type that fast.
My bad.
So it was Joe Koch.
Yes. Charlene Elsby. Mm-hmm.
Usually we try to go for 3. So what was the next one that you said?
Shit. B.R. Yeager.
Yeah, you mentioned him before.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that name before.
But I'd also say, I have to tell y'all, the Broken River Collective, the other authors that I write with, their writing inspires me the most on a daily basis because we're always sharing with each other the different things we're working on.
Mm-hmm.
So those guys, that's a lot of what I'm reading all the time because I'm reading what they're coming up with.
Got it. So the reason that we like to choose like the first 3 is because usually there's a reason subconsciously why the things that pop to the top of our heads do that. And so you started with Joe Koch. What do you like about his work? Or is there like a particular book or story that you like?
Yeah, there's a particular story. It's called Offerings.
Are they burnt off?
Something about the way Joe write, Joe just got language under control in a way that I don't, and I don't see a lot of other people do. So I read Joe's stuff for inspiration. My favorite is the collection Convulsive.
Okay.
That's what I like a lot.
Is there something about Offerings that strikes you on like the deeper, more gut level in terms of like, is there some element of the story that speaks to you?
Yeah. The story gives me the same feeling of this video game called Bloodborne.
Okay.
It's just very cosmic horror almost in a modern setting, but written in a kind of gothic sort of way. It's dark. There's a reveal in the story where these children who are wearing masks, that the masks are revealed not to be masks. They're just part of their face. And that part stood out to me. And it has a very bleak, unhappy ending. And I like that too.
Okay. Let's see. You mentioned Convulsive. What'd you like about that?
Well, that Convulsive is a collection of stories. Offerings is in that.
Okay.
In that collection.
All right.
And what I liked about that collection is all of it feels kind of like a fever dream. It's not really clear if the things are happening in our time, our place, our world, but everything seems kind of unfamiliar, but it's very uncanny is a word I would say.
Okay.
That liminal space.
Yeah.
What do you like? Is there a particular story or book by Charlene that you like?
Yeah. Charlene's writing I could talk about all day, so I'm going to try to chill on that, but not go too hard. But Charlene is a lovely person and an amazing writer whose work I'm forever inspired by. She's somebody I've read her stuff over and over again, which is crazy because there's so many books out there still to read, but some people's stuff I just get hooked on. Her book, The Devil Thinks I'm Pretty, is phenomenal. It is a book about a waitress in a trailer park who is this is my interpretation of the book, okay? But it's a waitress in a trailer park who is being beaten down physically, emotionally, in every aspect of life through all the things that are so frustrating about being in a dead-end situation with a non-existent mother and no family, like just all that shit, until she basically harnesses her own beauty and ability to manipulate others and then just destroys everything and everyone. And it's so brutal. I love that book. And I've read it more than once.
Okay.
It's a really good book. And as far as scenes in that, there's a scene where Shorty just running through the trailer park, throwing Molotov cocktails into the windows of the trailer park. Just like, oh man, what? That's
okay.
Great. It's completely letting loose. You feel me?
Yeah, that's not the image I was expecting when you're talking about harnessing her own abilities and destroying everybody. Like there's a lot of different ways you can interpret that. Molotov cocktails was not the first that was coming on.
She manipulates and she's high school age too, right? The end of high school, and she manipulates a group of other high schoolers to get involved in this, I guess you call it an orgy, where she like forces one of the boys to do something that's horrible, and then he like can't stop in the middle of doing it, and it's just like it's horrible. She does all these horrible things to people after you've already read a whole 2/3 of a book of her being abused by society and her family. You know what I mean? Like at that point, I'm just like, yeah, shorty, hit him with them Molotov cocktails. I'm trying to see everybody burn too. The fuck? Like,
it's a revenge story at that point.
It is, and it's just amazing how she can make you root for somebody who has now become so horrible. It's amazing.
Is there a story that you liked from Mr. Yeager?
Yeah, so he has a collection called "Burn You the Fuck Alive."
No fucking way.
Speaking of
that's
which,
what it's called.
The title is "Burn You the Fuck Alive."
Yeah,
love it.
It is phenomenal. It is full of art by Mike Correo that doesn't make any sense. The table of contents starts 3 stories into the book. Have you ever seen the movie Mandy?
Yeah.
Do you remember how in the movie Mandy, for no reason, halfway through the movie, it just does the title card for Mandy? Like it just pops up in the middle of it, and you're like, what? You're like, that's
right?
weird.
Like,
yeah.
That happened a long time. I mean, I get like doing that delay, but that was a while ago.
Didn't that make you feel something? Like kind of like this is different. Well,
the whole movie kind of made me feel something.
That's his book. That's that book. He just pops the title and the table of contents in the middle, and you're like, well, what have I been doing all this time? And it's just so brutal. Yeah, he's a huge inspiration for writing, both his prose and his content. And the fact that he does so much writing in first person, it made me think he really out there killing people in Massachusetts for real. Like, or something, or he knows somebody who did something like that. Man,
it's very authentic.
Putting yourself into the character.
Yeah, man, it's just so brutal, man. So brutal.
And let's throw a little here for Broken River Collective. Anything standing out to you at the moment from them?
Well, right now, J. David Osborne is working on his God's Fare No Better, the 3rd installment in it, which is called Neon Hell. And it's different. It's like cyberpunk, but he had always been a horror crime writer in the past.
Okay.
So it's cool to see him do something different. And what I'm most inspired by him by is his ability for juxtaposition. And what I mean by that is he'll like just have a very brutal book where there's a lot of extreme violence, a lot of action, but then he'll have these like moments that like of heart that pull at the heartstrings in the middle of it. And I just the juxtaposition of that just kind of fucks you up. So I'm very interested by that when authors use different techniques and things. I like that.
Okay. Let's see. So for adult years, we talked about Halloween mostly being for your kids.
Yeah.
What else? No nightmares or reoccurring dreams as an adult.
Nah.
Anything in real life terrify you as an adult?
Shoot, man. Since I had a kid, everything terrified me. Man,
that's not uncommon.
Man, so much shit terrifying me because now I got other people I got to worry about. You feel me? So, yeah, everything terrifying me, man. I see crazy shit all day. I be out with my wife and my daughter just trying to go pick up a bushel of crabs. Just the other day. This is yesterday. I'm down southwest. I try to go to get a bushel of crabs, right? So we can go to my mother-in-law's house with some crabs, right? We at the crab joint. And there's this lady come up to me. She like, hey, can you buy my crabs and I'll cash app you the money? And I got to grab my daughter tight because, of course, she trying to scam me. You feel me? What she want me to do is she want me to buy her crabs. She going to cash app me. And then like 10 minutes later, she going to hit the fight the funds, you know what I mean? And fight the transaction. So, and first of all, don't be like, anyway, it don't matter either way. The point of what she doing, the point is, I got my daughter with me. This is a stranger talking to me. All of a sudden, I'm clutching my daughter closer and shit like that.
Yeah.
My wife pregnant with twins right now. I'm about to have 2 more in the family, and like everything scare me. You feel me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, flipping that question around, any time in your adult life when you've been exceptionally calm or safe or bliss?
Man, when I'm at home and my wife asleep and my daughter asleep, and I can hear this snoring, and it's synchronized into one mutated Voltron snore that let me know they both in that deep REM sleep, and then I can go downstairs and you hear the beep beep of the PlayStation turning on, and I'm finna play Elden Ring, and my doors are all locked. Everything is good. Everybody's sleeping. That's that moment. Oh my God, it feel good.
So again, a pair of questions. Going to start with the negative so we can end on positive. Do you remember the last person you hurt?
The last person I hurt.
No is an acceptable
Yes.
question.
No, I do. No. I do know the last person I hurt. There was this raffle for these Orioles tickets, right?
Okay.
And this woman I know, she was like, "Hey, if you get all the tickets, can you give some to me so I can take my son?" And I was like, maybe, no, probably not. That's what I said, right? I said, maybe, no, probably not. I know what I said. I said, maybe, no, probably not. She was like, oh. And I was like, yeah. And that was that. And then I won the raffle, right? So I got five motherfucking tickets, right? So I got a ticket for myself, ticket for my wife, ticket for my daughter. And then I was like, bet, let me take my mother-in-law and my nephew. You feel me? So we going to go see the Orioles and play the Blue Jays, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, wait, you really going to take those other 2 tickets? And I was like, yeah, fuck you mean? And she seemed really hurt by that.
This is like a random person, like you don't know her from anybody, right?
Oh, no. People I work with.
Oh,
yeah. It was work. Yeah, my bad. I should have specified by that. Yeah, people I work with. I won this raffle through work, and
Okay.
yeah, the fuck would I give it to anybody else? I don't fuck, I mean, in case anybody I work with listens to this, you know what I mean? I fuck with some of y'all. You feel me? Like not all of y'all. You feel me? And like, if anything, I don't fuck with any of y'all enough that I would give you 2 free Orioles tickets. Fuck, baseball games are fun.
What movie was that with the fuck you, you're cool?
Half baked. Yeah. Classic. Yeah, yo. So yeah, I felt like she was hurt by the situation because instead of getting like angry and talking shit about it, the only word I can describe is her expression looked crestfallen. Like you feel me? Like I literally seen her crest fall, like her chin like went down to her chest and her eyes lowered, and she was like, "Oh, really? Yeah, dummy. What the hell?
You got family.
The fuck?" And my mother-in-law and nephew had a great time seeing the Orioles and the Blue Jays, and we got all sorts of overpriced ballpark bullshit.
See, now you're just rubbing it in. Yeah, so flipping that around, do you remember the last person you helped? Actually, it could be the same answer. Your what was it you said?
My mother-in-law and nephew. I helped them get to the Orioles game. Nah. Hold on. The last person I helped. Well, I'm going to use this opportunity to say this so I can plug it. But every so often and recently, I send books to Prisoners, which is an organization which distributes books to prisons, obviously from the name, and gets them in the libraries, and so that the prisoners can have books to read. And I always pack them full of my books and the other Broken River Boys books, and I get it out there.
Good point. Nice. Good deal. And also a good point. I decided not to say anything about my book at the start of the call. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Since we're talking about this, is probably a good point to bring it up, and also a reminder for me to do something similar. I, about 10 years ago, wrote a book about the things that I learned in going to therapy and going to 12-step programs, and wanted to share some of that stuff with other people who are trying to learn that same material. And a couple different times in my life, I have sent copies of those to, I don't want to say homeless shelters because that's not the right word, but like shelters that specifically deal with like domestic violence and stuff like that.
Yeah, like rehab shelters, I guess.
Yeah, my mom didn't always have the best relationship picker, let's put it that way. So there's some history there, and I just feel like that's where I want to send those copies of that book. Hopefully help some people out there kind of the same way. So
hell yeah. Yeah, yo, that's the best thing. And you should see if you can reach out to Books to Prisoners and see if you can get that in there too, because that sounds like a great resource.
That's not a bad idea. But, could do that
not
too.
Not a bad idea.
They could definitely learn, because prison should be not punitive. It should be rehabilitative. I mean, it isn't.
That's kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it should be. So they can definitely use stuff like that.
Yeah. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So for the next two questions, these are not just going to cover any particular time in your life. So it's going to be over your entire life. And it's not going to just be about horror. So it could be any genre. What movie have you watched more times than any other?
Well, there's this movie called Home. It's one of them like Pixar animation movies. It's with Rihanna and the dude who plays Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory. Yes. And it's an alien invasion movie, but a kid's joint.
Right.
And me and my daughter have watched that so many times, and I love it just as much as her. It actually is an amazing movie because it shows how you could do a complete G-rated alien invasion and subjugate all the humans, but still keep it G-rated. It's amazing. Within the first like 2 minutes of the movie, the aliens come to Earth. They put all the humans in bubbles and transport them to Australia. They wipe everything off Australia and replace it with amusement parks and like ice cream places and anything the humans need, so they don't ever have to work again. And they put all the humans in Australia, and then they just take their homes. And they're like, that's it. And then the movie start. And I remember the first time I seen it with my daughter, and I was like, oh, so that's how you do a sci-fi joint for kids. Yeah. Because at some point I might want to do a horror, a scary or sci-fi or something for kids. And I was like, oh, that's how you do it. But I've seen that joint so many times with my daughter. And the soundtrack cranked too, because it's Rihanna's. That joint cranked.
There you go. Yeah.
So next question being, that's the one you've watched more times than any other. Now the next question is, what would you say is your favorite movie?
Mandy.
Okay.
Had that one quick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. That's a, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's my,
it's a good one.
Yeah, it's Mandy. But sometimes I go back and forth between that and District 9, but usually it's Mandy.
Okay. Why don't we get a District 10?
Oh, man, you know what? Probably never. And maybe that's what we deserve.
Maybe. I mean, at least we got the Oates movies. We got something from Mr. Plum.
Those are fun too. They are. I've enjoyed watching those little shorts.
So you brought up Mandy earlier, and you mentioned the title card. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I think it was kind of having trouble finding my words, but it was like off kilter, unexpected.
That shit crazy is the term that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, is that how you feel about the movie, or is it like what would you say you like about it?
Mandy is a movie where it starts out pretty simple and then gradually goes completely unhinged, completely off the rails. Okay. Yep. In a way I haven't seen done before. Everything from the dudes who can't feel pain on the bikes, the black skulls, to it basically starts with a dude. He liked this woman, but he can't get her, so he drug her and try to show her his mixtape, and then she laugh at him and be like, your mixtape is terrible. So he lights her on fire, and then Nicolas Cage is like, oh shit, I know you ain't just light shorty on fire. And then he just goes after everybody. But then it's just gradually getting crazier and crazier and crazier as it goes on, till by the end of the movie, when he explodes dude's face with his hands, you're just kind of accepting of that. You're like, yeah, well, that's how it should end. You know what I mean?
It's like a gradually increasing PCP fever dream.
That is exactly what it's like. Mm-hmm. Yep.
as if either of you would know. That's a scary thought.
That's what I assume PCP is like. I don't know. All I know about it is that, and apparently you wind up in chicken coops.
Yes.
I've read literature.
I'm somewhat of a PCP expert myself.
Yo.
All right. So what'd you like about District 9?
Oh man, District 9, what I liked about it was when the movie was leading up to when the movie came out, there was all this promo. I was working in DC at the time, and they put up these posters at various bus stops in Washington, DC that had the alien silhouette with the like red no sign on it, the circle with the line through it.
Yep.
And then it had no explanation for what it was. And like, this is still social media time, but not social media like now, you know? And I just remember being like, and what on earth is this? And just like looking at my phone, trying to figure out what it was. So there was a lot of lead up.
It was good viral marketing.
It was. And the way it led up to it. And then I watched the movie and I was like, oh, this is sad. This is beautiful. Damn, that's really what people would probably do to aliens. And I was like, oh, man. And then I don't know. I like movies that don't follow the same sort of thing as shit I've seen before. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So going back to horror for a minute, but again, going across your entire life, do you see any common threads about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical, supernatural, psychological? My
favorite type of horror, both to experience and to write, is like I said, gradually increasing uncomfortable and humans being bad to each other, like Green Room or The Strangers. You feel me? Like, there's real questions if Mandy is supernatural, you know? There are things that seem supernatural, but it's also just rage and violence and people hurting each other. I find that infinitely more interesting to explore. People are always doing bad stuff to each other all the time. You could open up the news any day and see a horror story. And when you start trying to explore the emotions those people felt, the desperation or the fear or things like that, that's what really intrigues me.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of ties in with some of what the notes I've been making. This would be the part where we like talk about whatever common themes have been cropping up, and then maybe talk about how those themes intersect with horror. And there's actually like 3 or 4 different things really, and I'm trying to figure out how they all kind of the pieces fit together. Like 2 of the big pieces are family and things being irreversible. Obviously, family is very important to you. We've talked about everything from your mom and dad being disappointed to you to, you know, writing letters in juvie, spending time with your family, both in childhood and adult years. I'm wondering whether or not your love of Mandy might even tie into that, because I think the characters you're talking about, Nicolas Cage and Mandy, have a relationship, so maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
And then obviously body horror has come up a lot in the call and the irreversible nature of it. But then the other 2 things that keep coming up are being uncomfortable. And I think masks have come up 2 or 3 times in the call, and I think that's tied to the uncomfortable part. And so I'm guessing it's like that razor's edge of there's an uncomfortable situation here, and it can either fall on the side of, you know, being at home with the family, or something happens that's irreversible. Like, what's going to happen here? And I really like how you'd said that you were finding inspiration from David J. Osborne because of the way he managed to juxtapose this, you know, the brutality with moments of heart, because that's really drilling in on exactly the stuff that we're talking about right now. And what you just said here about the common themes, you know, gradually increasing uncomfortableness and people being mean to each other. Again, that's exactly what we're talking about here. So I guess like the natural question to ask after that is, why is that important to you? And I think I know what the answer that might be there, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I'll just ask you first. What do you have any idea why that stuff is important to you?
Why family and body, or the juxtaposition part,
and that being on the razor's edge between the two?
Mm, mm. I don't know. I don't know that I've ever thought, not to say I won't and don't want to. I'd love to explore the subject. I've never really thought about why those things are. I kind of just, that's how you're supposed to feel about family. And that's how I've always felt about the irreversible changes one can make. I don't know. What were you going to say it is? I'm interested to hear what you was going to say, Steve.
So I've also mainly lived in urban settings. I have also spent some time out in the country, but primarily my experience has been in an urban setting. And I won't say that I lived in the bad parts of town, but there are often times that I was like right on the border. And so I've walked on the other side of town and spent time over there. And I can remember, for example, when I was in Philly, there was quite literally a crackhead that lived across the street from us that was apparently in with some very not nice people, but my stepfather apparently had done him some favors, and he was basically like, if you ever need something, like, go talk to this guy. But at the same time, you had to be careful, because if the dude was out of his mind, he didn't know who you were. Right. And so that's kind of like, when we're talking about the knife's edge, I'm remembering living in that situation and feeling like that's home, or was home at the time. And so not necessarily trying to make sense of the world that you live in, but partially, how do I control the situation in a way that keeps me and the people I care about safe in a world of craziness? And it's that,
right.
How do I do this? I guess is
so you're talking about how this dude across the street, he could be somebody to help you, but at the same time, at any given time, he could also be the dude to wild out on you and put you in a position of danger.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm not just talking about that person. I'm talking about the whole environment.
The environment. Yeah. No, that's an example of that whole kind of environment, ambiance, vibe, everything to that sort of for the situation.
And that's that is like a overall view on life, really. You go through life and there's opportunities, but also things you want to keep an eye out for.
But what I was getting at is the thing that I could think of, that the potential reason that this stuff is important to him is growing up in that situation. It would make sense to then try to wrap your head around that and say, how do I make sense of this? How do I manage it? How do I keep the people that I care about safe in this?
That could definitely be what I'm doing when I'm reading about it or writing about it, trying to figure it out, trying to sort it all out. Because in my head, I'm always trying to sort it all out, and I obsess over things. I obsess over interactions and strange things that happen throughout the day living in Baltimore. Things that just don't make sense, that I don't know if anybody else has to deal with where they're from. Maybe they do, but the thing is, like, yeah, so you're right. I think that's accurate.
I think that's half of it. I mean, the other potentially half of it is there might be some sense of joy too, because, even going all the way back to childhood and walking in on the fly and, being freaked out, but obviously there's something about that and the books you were reading as a kid that, like, you got into it. You didn't put it down and walk away and say, no, that's not for me.
Bro, you just broke it down better than any therapist ever could with tons of money. Yo, you really did. Cause let me tell you, let me tell you something. Let me tell you why that hit so hard, right? Cause I'll have a situation happen, an encounter with an uncomfortable encounter in the street, right? Where I'm walking down the street, minding my own business, and a person is approaching and they're screaming all sorts of crazy things at the sky, and maybe they light themselves on fire or run into traffic or throw something or just do something very shocking, right? And when this happens to me, The only thing I wish is that I could get me, if there's anyone with me, everyone out of that situation and into a safe place. God, why do I have to live like this? Why is this happening to me? Oh my God, this is so uncomfortable, right? But then once the adrenaline and everything has all settled down and everything is all good, I'm sitting in the house like, I wonder what he was thinking about that made him wild out like that. Yo, let me see how I could write it. Can I make somebody else feel as uncomfortable as me by writing this? Like that. So you so right about that. In the moment, I don't want to be a part of it because my desire to protect my family and myself outweighs that and the resistance of the uncomfortable situation. But once it's passed and I'm a passive observer, oh man, I'm so grateful from living where I
Now that
live.
I'm safe, let me stare.
Yeah,
Right.
facts,
Right.
bro. You broke that shit down.
And not only stare, pay it forward. Like, I need to find a way to get other people to experience this discomfort.
Hell yeah, bro. Y'all gonna feel uncomfortable just like me. What?
That actually
Always. That's one of the reasons I write horror. I ain't gonna lie, bros. That's why I do it, because I have shit happen where I'm like, oh, I seen this. Y'all gonna hear about this shit. Y'all gonna have to deal with that. Take that and deal with that.
You know, what's funny is this is kind of leading into the next question, which is why horror? Because, like, you know, once we drill down on what's important to you, then the next question is why horror? Because couldn't you explore some of those things in other genres? And for other conversations we've had with other creators, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. In this case, I don't know if you could, you know, find this in any other genre. Maybe war stories. I'd find it in a rom-com, I'll tell you that.
Bros, let me tell you something, right? One thing that I always say is when you look at shit close enough, almost every genre is actually horror. Like, watch this. Let me break it, and if it ain't horror, it's fucking horrifying. And you can
Take it to the extreme.
Like, look, take it to the extreme. Watch a motherfucking movie like Meet the Parents or those Meet the Fockers movies where just one bad thing is happening to Ben Stiller over and over and over again. That's fucking horrifying. I would hate to be in a situation where Robert De Niro is my father-in-law. That fucking sucks. And then you gotta, those movies fill me with anxiety. You feel me? So that's another type of horror. And if you just throw a different soundtrack on it, it becomes Beau is Afraid. Y'all seen that movie? Like,
oh yeah.
That's all it's doing. So like, and then, okay, bet. Let's watch a movie like Menace to Society or Belly, that movie, you know, with DMX and Nas and shit. Let's watch that. Okay, it's a gangster movie because it's got rappers playing actors and because of how it's marketed. But for real, when you watch it, fucking horrifying. It's a
crazy
horror
Jamaican
fucking
fucker gonna kill you.
Right. Right. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The way that movie opened up with the blacklight eyeballs and they robbing everybody and killing everybody. Why is that not horror? Why? Because DMX and Nas in it. Fuck out of here. So I really feel like I don't want to market my books under crime noir. Nah, I want some fucking mutants and aliens in the middle of the crime. You feel me? Like, what can I do that? And I don't want it to be bizarro. I want it to be bizarro and splatterpunk and extreme horror and, you know, crime. You feel me? And thriller. Like, and I just, oh no, I just think with horror, I can explore everything. And as long as I have fucked up shit happen from time to time in my book, then everybody will still include me in their shit. And I can still sell books and shit like that without somebody being like, well, this wasn't horror. You feel me?
Yeah.
You had said a second ago that, you know, any other genre, if you took it to an extreme, could be horror. You're talking about writing in this genre. I don't want to say to take it to an extreme, but maybe doing that allows you to talk about maybe something that you want to talk about that you wouldn't be able to talk about if you didn't take it to that extreme.
Exactly. That's what it is. I wanted to write a fast-paced crime thriller that took place in Baltimore. That's when I wrote my first book. But I wanted to also give myself the freedom to make the violence really extreme and some of the antagonists really extra. I mean, let me ask y'all a question. Is The Crow a horror movie?
Yeah. You know?
Why?
I would consider
What makes it a horror movie? Because they introduce goth subculture to people dressing.
Yeah, it's
Why?
the dark atmosphere and the the violence of the villains or the antagonists. But yeah, I see where you're coming from. Like,
So
there are some other movies I've seen where the theme of it and the overall story is not necessarily a horror movie, but then you have a scene where there's some fucking just crazy graphic violence that happens. Like, case in point, Green Room.
Yep.
Not really a horror movie. It's more of a fun coming of age punks in a band story. But then Anton Yelchin gets his arm turned into a fucking capicola log, and Jesus.
You see? And it's also marketed as such. And I mean, if y'all have read Whale Fall by Daniel Krauss, that book that came, it's a really good book, but I keep seeing that it's joint marketed as horror. And I'm like, man, that book is a heartfelt coming of age book, as deep as, that joint should be a mainstreamer like the Goldfinch or Where the Crawdads Sing type shit.
Mm-hmm.
But whole time, Shorty blow himself up in a whale with a sock battery. And I mean, that's, while he's getting eaten by orcas and shit. Like, so, all right, let's move this motherfucker in the horror section and make some horror money. I don't know. Like, is that what's happening? I don't really know, man. Cause like a lot of shit is horror. Like a lot of things are horror to me.
Mm. Well, I think we got a pretty good nail on, what you like out of it, what's important to you, and maybe even parts of why it's important to you. I guess really the last question is, before we hit the wrap, is there anything that you think is important about maybe your background or your experiences that you didn't get a chance to say, or maybe like you thought of something earlier in the call and then the conversation took a left turn and you didn't get a chance to say it? Maybe a question we didn't think to ask?
No, and the only thing I would say for the listeners is, one thing that's really cool is that the internet and the world has allowed us to experience a lot of different writers who we wouldn't normally have experienced. Indie writers, small press, people like that. And, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have found Paula D. Ash. Paula wouldn't have found me. I wouldn't have became a fan of her work. She wouldn't have became a fan of mine. And y'all wouldn't be listening to me on this motherfucker today. So
that is true.
That we can explore. And if you like something you hear, you like my writing, you like any of the people I've been talking about, if any of them sound interesting to you, check them out. I think you'll have a great time.
Cool. Well, we will get together with you offline to put together a bio page and link to whatever it is that you want to link to. So I guess before we hit the closing, you want to let people know again what you're currently working on?
Yeah. Right now, you got Ghost of East Baltimore and Ghost of West Baltimore available. I have a small limited edition collection from Bruiser Publishing called Foul Black Rookeries. It's at bruiser.com. You can get a copy before they run out. And I have a new book coming next year with Apocalypse Party called Eradicator. And I'm really excited to share that with all of y'all. And Steve and Chris, I really appreciate y'all having me on the show. It was so fun talking with y'all about horror. It definitely makes me happy. I laughed a lot and I enjoyed it. I had a happy, enjoying time. Enjoyed my time. Yeah,
glad talking to you as well.
Yeah,
and thank you to anybody out there listening. Please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. We'll have a list there of all the people that we've talked to and all the people we'd like to talk to. If you want more information on David, you can just find him on the episodes page and link to whatever we link to for him. There are also people at the bottom of that list on the episodes page, which is a list of all the people we'd like to get in touch with. So if there's anybody there that you can help us get in touch with, let us know. Otherwise, just tell a friend, spread the word.